Greetings, welcome back, and hello everyone. This is the Product Uncensored show with your host, Colin Pell, and today we are recording episode 17. Now, there are four very important things that I need to go through before we get into our special guest for today. So here are the four things. Number one, I write at www.productuncensored.com. Number two, if you want to check out our videos, we are on YouTube. And while you are watching those videos, don't forget to subscribe and also click the bell icon there so that you will always be notified when we have new content. If you like podcasts, we are available on all major podcasting platforms. Don't forget to follow there as well. And finally, if you would like to support this show, there is a link in the description to buy me a coffee. So these are the four very important things. And today I want to jump straight into our very special guest. Now, today's show, again, it is special because this is the first time I'm having female guests back to back. So the last guest we had on the show was Radhika, and today we have another special female leader. She's a product leader who has graced the stage at events such as Product Management Festival, APAC, and also this year's leading the Product Digital Conference. She's the founder of Women in Product Singapore and currently the product lead at Transferwise for AU and NZ. She's none other than Christine Sou. Welcome to the show, Christine.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, fantastic. I'm really, really excited that this has happened. So a little bit of background for you guys. We've had to sort of reschedule and try to match our timings as well. So finally, this is happening. So I'm super, super excited. So maybe I'll start off with by congratulating you because I think you've made the finalist of B&T Women Leading in Product Tech Awards.
All right. Yes. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So that's really great. And you have been like super busy. I see that you've been on, LTP and you've got a few more conferences, I think finished or in coming up. I believe one was
for this year, it's finished. I was supposed to be involved with Money 2020 as well, but they canceled the conference.
Oh, okay. Yeah. It was that.
Well, it went digital, actually, I should say.
Okay. All right. Yeah. We'll come to that a little bit later about, the whole idea of, things being digital. But yeah, it kind of sucks, especially with COVID, kind of blew everybody's plans out of the water. So let's start with who you are, because that's obviously the most interesting part of the show. Tell us a little bit more about, where you're from, where you grew up.
Okay. Well, I was born and raised in Sacramento, California. It's the capital of California, for those of you that think it's. And then I spent my entire life in California. I went to university there, worked in Silicon Valley for a few years, and then decided that I wanted to see a bit of APAC and see how I can impact the challenges and the problems here, learn from the different markets and cultures. So now I've been in Singapore for the last 3 years.
Fantastic. We're going to start with your studies. So you studied in University of California, Bachelor of Arts and International Studies in Economics and Business. So how did you get from there into product management?
Yeah. It was, I don't think I knew what product management was when I was in university. But I had started working when I was a sophomore, mostly to pay for spring break trips and small vacations between summer break and whatnot. And then I thought, like everyone else, I would do finance and get into being a banker. So I interned actually at UBS, which is a wealth management firm. That was my first professional internship. Hated it. And realized, okay, even though I like business management and the concepts that I was learning in school, it wasn't the culture that I felt was right for me. And in particular, it was too professional. I wanted something a bit more hustle, but laid back. And that's actually San Diego. It's a perfect description of San Diego. So I left the wealth management internship, and then I applied for a project management internship at Sony. And that was when I first started working in tech. So as a junior in university, I worked for the PlayStation Store e-commerce platform. So I learned a lot from the initial team there. They mentored me, gave me a ton of opportunity. And then from there, I learned about product management and started to be more involved in the features, get a bit more ownership rather than just timelines. I was starting to influence the direction of how the feature could be built. And then, after graduation, I took on a full-time role with Sony, continued doing project management because the product role wasn't officially set up yet. And then after a couple of years, transitioned over into product.
Okay.
That happened organically in that way. Yeah.
It's quite the common story for most, especially for most of the guests I interview on the show,
right.
that it's usually something that wasn't planned. But then from there, once you get in, or rather once you find out what it is that you're doing, the transition is usually quite organic. So yeah, it sounds just about right. Even the accidental part.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I wanted to come back to one question, or one comment that you made, right? You said you hated your time in wealth management mainly because it was too professional and you wanted something a little bit more laid back. Laid back is not exactly the term that I hear many people use for startups and product management. So the question is, when you went from UBS to Sony, did you get the laid back that you were looking for?
I guess when I say laid back, I don't mean like it's a relaxing job, but I mean you take a step back and you realize there's actually a lot of different problems you could be solving. Whereas I think in wealth management, it was very much focused on the end goal, which was maximizing revenue. Whereas I think within the roles that I was in product, it's much more well-rounded, and you think about how can I impact the world in a more positive way. At least I don't want to make it seem like in the finance world it's bad. It's just more, it wasn't for me.
Yeah.
And it didn't resonate with it as much. So that's what I mean. It's not, certainly product is not a laid back role, but it allows you to take a step back and really look at how you can impact change across different angles. And that's what I like. It's the variety of different challenges that you're facing.
Okay. Yeah. That is a lot clearer now, because oh wow, laid back is not really the term I've heard used very often. Yeah. So
right.
let's talk about Sony for a bit as well, because you worked for Sony, and obviously they produce PlayStation, so obviously almost all the male viewers here and the female gamers here would be like, oh, she worked for PlayStation. Was it intentional that you applied for Sony, or was that something that also happened as things went?
I mean, there weren't that many tech opportunities in San Diego. I think it's primarily known for bioengineering, biomedical industry. So it was between Sony and a couple other technology players. I think Sony resonated the most because it was fun. I mean, you just have this concept of growing up playing games. Like I was a big and Nintendo 64 player. I did Game Boy, so it just seemed the most fun. So
Okay.
I optimized on that.
Right. So you would you consider yourself a gamer then?
Oh no. So I would like to be. I mean, it was really awesome to be part of the PS4 launch team and see how the process of producing such a console, along with the platform, the e-commerce platform, how that happens. But I'm not a gamer by heart. I got to test games before they came out, though, so that was pretty cool.
Yeah. So the part about being part of the PlayStation 4 launch team, so that's the part that I'm very interested in to understand a little bit more. How does one be a product manager for a game console? Like what goes into it? Like what were the crazy challenges? What were the most exciting parts about working on the PlayStation 4 launch team?
Well, I mean, Sony is a huge organization, right? So it's anytime there's a huge organization, there's a lot of it's a timeline of years to get to the final product. So my involvement was on PlayStation Now, which is the game streaming subscription service, sort of like Netflix for games for Sony. And for me, it was really exciting because it's a brand new product that they've never launched before. So I got a chance to define, who were the core target market that we would be building this product for. How does experience look like? So how do we design the catalog? How do we get old games to be streamed on the PS4 and working with the technology teams to get, for example, latency down to zero, as close to zero as possible. So what was it like? It was a lot of challenges because you got to go from, it's basically like a startup mentality. I'm coming up with a new product, but within a really large organization. So in that sense, there's a lot of stakeholders that you have to make sure that they're on the same page. Working between geos. So within San Francisco office, Tokyo, we've got an office in Orange County, Southern California, London. So basically it's tenacity, and it's a lot of pushing the envelope for what you think is important, and trying to influence people to change probably like older mindsets, right? Like, oh, maybe this is how it was done a few years ago, but now we're talking about game streaming. It's different. So let's define what it is. And that was really exciting for me to get that opportunity.
Yep. Following from that thought, or that discussion that we're having right now, is that, this was your first product manager role as well, and
Right.
You're having to manage between different geographies and stakeholders. It's a big company. How did you learn? Did you have a mentor in Sony, or were you just Googling for stuff? How did you really bring yourself up to that level?
Googling. Oh, that's funny. Yeah. I was very lucky to have joined the company so I worked for the startup division within Sony. We call it Sony Network Entertainment, and now it's called Sony Interactive Entertainment. But basically, the startup division was, I think, 50 people in the San Francisco office. So it felt very much like a family, a very small group of people. And they took me in and mentored me. Like, everyone gave me good feedback when I was a young, starry-eyed graduate from university. I think frequently the only female at the table built my perseverance to continue taking the problems on. And I think at the time when I started working on PlayStation, I was already there for like 3.5, almost 4 years. So I knew a lot of people, and I think they started to realize my work ethic. They started to trust me more over time. And I think that definitely helps, especially when you're taking on a completely new product for a big company, right?
Yeah.
So I think having that as a foundation helps. The second thing is being super good about asking questions. So I never made it seem like I knew everything, right? And I think the beauty about being a product is that you're supposed to be focusing on asking the right questions, right?
Yeah.
And so I did a lot of that in the beginning to make sure, I got feedback from folks and we were kind of all on the same page. I also think it was important to develop a shared vision. So it wasn't like it was my way or the highway. Like, I'm not a gamer myself, right? But I can empathize with the target market, and I could get different opinions from folks, and got buy-in from the engineering team who'd ultimately build the product so that everyone saw the same direction. I think that really helped to get it to market success.
Okay. And what about the fact that you had to work closely with teams across geographies? What did you do, or what tips do you have about managing different time zones and teams?
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone's going through that now in some way, shape, or form because of COVID and not being able to travel and working remotely. So, back then we had the same. We had similar tools. I think it was like WebEx or.
Well, the days of WebEx.
But look, I think the important thing is like spending time with people, and it's obviously more important if you can do it in person to build the rapport. But if you have to do it on video, I think it's really important to understand like why people do what they do. I'm very much a people first type of leader where I prioritize like making sure I understand people's motivations, their own goals, so I can also help them accomplish what they're looking for in the workplace outside of what we're building as a team, right? I think that's really important. So relationship is one important thing, and the tip for that was just spending extra effort to like get to know them beyond, hey, what's the status on this deliverable, right?
Mm.
Secondly, I think being super organized and having checklists. So you're doing a bunch of asynchronous communications, right? You're waking up to messages. You're going to sleep with asking questions and then waking up to the answers. So you have to be really detailed about what is it you're looking for and responsive, especially with language barriers. You have to be super clear. So I also experimented with recording my voice and recording that as a message, as well as written medium format, as well as PowerPoint. So you have to figure out what's the best medium for the audience that you're trying to reach. Yeah, and sometimes, cultural, mannerisms are also like, you have to read between the lines, but I think it's important that you don't make assumptions, like always ask for clarity if you don't understand what they're trying to say. Yeah.
Good tips. Now, last question about your time at Sony before we move on. When you took this product manager role, again, it's sort of like a new world. Granted, you'd been in Sony before that, so probably it helped a little bit to soften the landing. But this was a discussion I was having with another guest, and I thought it would be really cool to ask you as well. Like, when you started or in the early days, right? Did you find yourself asking yourself, like, did I make the right choice? Is product management for me, or were you in this feeling where you're like, oh, I have no idea what's happening? Yeah, what were you feeling at that time when you first transitioned into product management?
Yeah, I mean, there's, when you're not a PM and you look at what PMs do, you kind of see, oh, wow, it seems really fun to be able to sell a vision and get people to build it. And it is fun. But what you don't see is like all the hard work that goes behind the scenes. And I think when my first impression, like probably my first 3 months, I was like, okay, you think, okay, this is the output, but the input is actually, I would say, even more important, because you have to get the inputs right before you can deliver an output that makes sense for everyone, right? So I was definitely more stressed in the beginning about whether this was the right role for me, mostly because you think in the beginning you need to be good at everything.
Yes.
But over time, you learn, these are my strengths. I'm going to capitalize on my strengths. These are the things I'm not as good at, and I'm going to figure out how others can help me elevate there, or figure out, how can I take on roles that are, complementary to my strong skill sets. So I think having that maturity over time of knowing what kind of PM you are helps to make it easier. But yeah, my mindset pretty much changed. Like in the beginning, I was like, I got to be good at everything, and that as a PM, that means everything except for potentially coding. So, and I think I put a little bit too much pressure in the beginning. Though I think looking back, that did give me the grit and the tenacity to handle, whatever type of challenges would come in the workplace today.
Okay. Yeah. Good. It's really, really good to hear. Now let's fast forward and let's talk about how did you end up in Singapore? Like, why did you move? I mean, I'm sort of bypassing your time at Zillow for this session, but yeah, I'm more interested in what was the thought process, or why did you decide to go to Singapore?
Yeah, I think it starts with both personal and professional goals, right? So personally, I was at a time where I didn't have so many obligations. Like I don't have my own family yet. I didn't own big assets, and I still don't. And so it was like a great time to, like, if not now, then when type of question, right? And when I was in university, I always wanted to study abroad and live somewhere else to experience the cultures, learn and grow. And I never got to do that. I was very focused on doing well in university and also getting a great job after school. So yeah, after a few years of working, I was like, I think it feels like this is the right time. So that was my personal goal of living on my own and going outside of my comfort zone. Literally everyone I was surrounded with are born and raised Californian. So I think I was still only the first person that's gone out to Singapore in my group of friends. So that it was a personal goal to just get outside of my comfort zone.
Okay.
On the professional side, I thought that APAC region is definitely where the growth is at. I mean, it's where majority of the world's population lives. And I think, in the US, some of the tech companies tend to focus a lot just on solving domestic problems. But they don't realize like this is where the growth is. This is the region where most people still are mobile first, right? They don't have laptops, and I wanted to see what it was like to build product here. And I thought this is the direction where, and true, Google's expanded here, Stripe's expanded here. So I think a lot of tech companies are starting to see the value within APAC region and significantly invest in resources here. So it was more so to get ahead of the curve and like really learn how to build product within APAC region.
Okay. Yeah, it's very interesting because when you're talking about how you wanted to get out of your comfort zone and move somewhere else, usually for us in Asia, it's the other way around, right? You want to get out of your comfort zone and go to the US, and you're doing it the opposite direction. So yeah, I just thought the contrast in goals there was very interesting. But the question that comes following from what you just said is, why Singapore? Why not, Indonesia, where, I think at the time that you moved to Singapore was like 2016, 2017, is that right?
Right. 2017.
Yeah. So that would be around the time that, Indonesia's tech scene was like really exploding, or maybe even Philippines or Vietnam. So why Singapore of all the countries?
Well, I do have some, like, I'm a bit like a little bit risk adverse in that way as well, right? So why Singapore? I think, well, one, I didn't spend so much time searching for opportunities. I was actually poached, right? So I had the goal of going to APAC, and I targeted a few countries, including Hong Kong. And I spoke to people that actually reached out to me first. So to be fair, like from the first conversation to me moving, it was less than a month's time. So I didn't do as much like, what are the opportunities in Indonesia? What are the opportunities in Thailand? I didn't really go through that level of research. I spoke to people that I enjoyed speaking to and then thought, well, why not Singapore? It's English speaking, so it would be still within a level of comfort, right? Like I'm not going from like one completely different language, and I think that would be interesting, but I was still very risk adverse in that way. Like I moved, but it's still within a very comfortable, safe environment in Singapore. And I also thought, Singapore has the infrastructure to, then be able to travel within these other markets. And yeah, like as a single woman, I thought it was a safe place to start. Then if I wanted to move somewhere else, I could. It doesn't have to be forever.
Okay. Yeah. So talk to me about that poaching part, because I'm very curious to know, like, because I think you're referring to the time where MoneySmart approached you so how does that happen? Does someone from just call you up and say, hey Christine, would you like to move? You're like, let me think about it. Okay, yes, let's go. How did that happen? Because you said it was less than a month, so it would have been like a big transition for you, and you still did everything in a space of 4 weeks.
Yeah. So in the States, we only have 2-week notice periods normally. And so, yeah, like I think I was just ready. I was just ready to go. So there's not much that I had to like sort out, right? Like I said, I don't have my own family. There's no assets. So it was just packing up and, ending my rental lease and moving over. So there wasn't too much. And I'm so surprised I got it done, to be honest. But yeah, the poaching was, I think, the CPO at the time was saw my resume through probably an application that I submitted for another startup. So it was kind of like a referral from a different company, I think. And then we just had a really good conversation about what the opportunity was in Singapore and their expansion plans to Hong Kong. And I think that kind of hit the nail on the head, where I was like, I kind of wanted to see what Hong Kong was like. Like I'm actually Cantonese. I wanted to actually pick up more Cantonese, and that's what the language is in Hong Kong alongside English. So it felt like a really safe but applicable domain that I could influence, because it was also within the personal finance comparison space, and I had been working on mortgages and home loans at Zillow. So the domain was quite relevant. I also wanted to invest more in fintech and the problems there. So yeah, it just worked out. Like it was one conversation leading to another. I met with the team. I flew here for I think 5 days to meet with the rest of the team. And they were super welcoming. And then after that initial week, I flew back to San Francisco and gave in my notice. I put in my notice. So yeah.
I'm still so
It went
amazed.
by so fast.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I'm still so impressed that you make it sound so easy. It's like, yeah, I didn't have anything, just pack and go. I'm like, that's halfway around the world. So
No, and it's crazy. Like I didn't even tell my family. I didn't give them that much notice either, you know. And so, but I think truthfully, they kind of knew like I was quite ambitious in going beyond like staying in San Francisco for like the next few years. Like they knew I kind of had plans to like push myself beyond my comfortable boundaries. Even though, to be fair, like Singapore is, you know, one would say it's not that uncomfortable. Yeah. But it's because I didn't do all the research. Like I really just said, okay, cool, Hong Kong or Singapore, and then had the conversations here and decided to move.
Very nice. And let's talk about the part of the Hong Kong, the Hong Kong part, because at MoneySmart, I think you were also involved with expanding into Hong Kong and building the team there. I think I was in one of your talks where you talked about, you showed pictures of the flat that you were working out of, if I remember correctly. So there, how was the experience like? Because obviously Hong Kong and Singapore are very, very different. Singapore is very metropolitan in that sense, very heavy on the English side. Whereas Hong Kong has like these two cultures that live side by side, right? The very English speaking expat type, and then you have the really sort of like, that's what makes Hong Kong very appealing, right? Almost that old school feel. Yeah. How was it like to work with the people there? Did you have to overcome like language barriers? I mean, I don't know how much Cantonese you speak, so maybe it was very comfortable for you. But yeah, what were the kind of challenges that you faced in Hong Kong?
Yeah, so Hong Kong, it was it was so much energy, and I remember just being overwhelmed with that energy. Like so many people, it's so densely populated, right? So I took the subway into the Times Square area, and you get off the subway, and I'm like bombarded with all these flyers asking me to sign up for facial subscriptions. I don't know what else, right? So then my first impression was like, holy crap, like this is nowhere near the same density at all. And I think what I loved about it though was like, it's really going to push me outside of my comfort zone. Like I look Chinese, right? So of course they start speaking to me in Cantonese, and I wouldn't say that I was like super fluent. I still am not super fluent because you lose that growing up, right? So I picked it up. I just had to like suck it up and learn. I really wanted to learn, so it was good. But they could tell from my accent that I'm definitely not local, right? Like just from speaking Cantonese, like they're like, "Why are you speaking Cantonese so funny?" Like it's quite obvious. So what Hong Kong taught me was like you do have to be quite vocal for what you want, because you're in a sea of a lot of different people. So even if I want to order a pineapple bun at the store, I can't just stand there and like think they're going to come and ask me if I want something. I literally had to go to the counter and like, one pineapple bun, or I'd be standing there, for 20 minutes. So that's not something I was used to. It wasn't so comfortable, but I started doing that, and I started feeling more confident in my abilities to ask for what I want, to be clear about what I want. And if I couldn't say it, I just literally say, I don't know, like just tell her or the uncle that, I really don't know. And also like, I felt like I was under a lot of pressure to like, not just say no to all these subscriptions that were being thrown at me, but like to not get scammed as well. There were times where I was like, are they like being truthful? So it really taught me to read between the lines. And good thing is like everything was fine. Like people were great, and I've never gotten scammed, but I had to like really question like, okay, good, bad, like how do I read people, especially in a different language? So yeah, I don't know how to put into exact words like what I learned there, but it was a lot of like I say grit, a lot of like building my own confidence, learning how to say no, and like really being upfront about what I want, like going to the counter, clearing the counter if I have to. Yeah, and that was very different from the lifestyle I had in California.
So what about building, the product team in MoneySmart for Singapore and Hong Kong? If I understand it correctly, that there were product managers in both Singapore and Hong Kong, and you were responsible for hiring for the teams there as
Oh,
well.
actually, most of the teams are based in Singapore. So the product team and the engineering team are based in Singapore. We had some engineers in the Philippines as well. But in Hong Kong, it was mostly a content team.
Right.
Yeah, but I was the first PM to build the initial product in Hong Kong. So that meant that I did have the opportunity to live there for 3 months, set up the office, figuring out what's the product that we should launch within Hong Kong, because in Singapore there was already established product lines, but figuring out what's the right product for Hong Kong, doing a lot of user research and speaking to customers in Cantonese, in my broken Cantonese. All of that was really awesome. And then coming back to Singapore, working with the developers to define exactly what the product will eventually look like, working with the designers here as well, and then hiring the team to expand the product team into different verticals. So then I ended up looking after the expansion and the home loans vertical. And then there was like a credit cards vertical and insurance vertical. So the team grew from, I think I was probably PM number 2 or 3 to 6 or 7 at the end of it.
Okay. Yeah. So about the part where, you spent 3 months in Hong Kong and you were trying to understand what to launch for Hong Kong, are there maybe like 2 or 3 things that were super important for you, or any frameworks that you used or any practices that you had that really was super helpful for you in your time in Hong Kong that you can share with the listeners and viewers?
Tools that helped me define exactly what we should launch in Hong Kong.
Yeah. I mean, or basically any new market, right? Because this is something that was new. So yeah, how did you decide what to launch?
Yeah, so I mean, I think there's a lot of different resources out there for doing competitive market analysis and whatnot. But I think for me, it was like 3 main questions, like how do we play? Right. So what's the plan for playing in the Hong Kong market? Why do we play? Like knowing the mission and like what's the ultimate goal? So let's say if your goal was revenue, you might prioritize some other things. If your goal was user acquisition, then you might prioritize a different set. And then it's like, what do we build? What are the key aspects of the product that people would resonate with to get to the end goal? And I just started those 3 questions. Of course, you look at some of what the market needs are. So like you look at what people, what are the big pain points that people go through with personal finance. That led us to understanding what kind of content we needed to produce. But content was a good means of driving traffic and acquisition, and then from there getting them to look at personal finance products so that they're more savvy when it comes to making better financial decisions for themselves, right? So that's the main mission of the company, is to help people make savvier financial decisions. And so basically gave them the tools to do that. Whether we started with credit cards or home loans or insurance was really up to what the market needed, and to prioritize those product verticals. I spoke to a lot of customers. I looked at, I asked them to show me like how they manage their finances today. What are the tools that they use and what's a big pain point that they have? And then grouping those pain points into themes led us to figuring out what was the ultimate product roadmap.
All right, thank you. That's very enlightening. So yeah, I think if anyone who's listening or watching and they're trying to figure out how to do it, I think Christine has just given us quite interesting and quite good tips on what you can do. Of course, you do your homework for more specifics, but I think those are good guidelines to go on with. Now, let's move to, or maybe let's start with a question of why did you decide to move to Transferwise?
I think I was at a point where, it's awesome to be able to expand to a new market. And I was really happy about building the team culture at MoneySmart. And then I was like, okay, I realized that underlying personal finance is money movement. Like at the end of the day, like you can't, like you can get a home loan, but you need to be able to facilitate money movement somewhere. And I was very interested in learning like one level deeper how money moves. And I also was really passionate about like equalizing the playing field for people that worked really hard to earn money. One way of helping them equalize it is by giving them a platform to compare products. But another way is also to like make sure that we're charging fairly for payments around the world. And I learned about Transferwise by going to one of their talks on their in the Singapore office. And it was really fascinating. I was really fascinated by their mission, and that was to make sure that it's money without borders. People can send money instantly, as free as possible, as fast as possible, as cheap as possible, as easy as possible. And I loved it because it was all about making it fair. And I didn't realize like banks were charging 6x the amount for a transaction. And for, let's say a hardworking mom who wants to send her kid to the UK for school, like why would I want them to pay 6x to the bank? Why not actually just make it as convenient and as cheap as possible? So I really resonated with that. So the opportunity was awesome, and the mission really resonated with me. So I thought it was a good opportunity to take up.
Okay. So now here's one very interesting question as well, because I've had this with multiple people, right? So it sounds like you moved in part to Transferwise because you resonated with the mission, and that's what you said. How important is it for a product person or product leader to actually feel passionate about the product that they're working for?
I think it varies on from person to person what drives them, right? I wouldn't say there's like a one answer for everyone. I will say though that it's important to have some kind of pushing factor. And if that push factor on the really worst days of the PM, like you could be doing things that you don't want to do, whether that's, I don't know, it could be writing copy or digging into a bug that the team can't reproduce. There are days where it's not that glamorous, but what's going to push you to still do the best that you can as a PM? And I think for me, the guiding principle has always been when I worked on products that were aligned with the mission. And that mission needs to align somewhat in my desire to make a difference in some way in the world, right? So, like you don't necessarily have to, like, for example, like mortgages. Like I definitely don't think mortgages is a particularly fun product, but it was more of like what it stood for. And what I loved was that it was so applicable to everyone that had a dream about buying their first home. And if I felt like I could influence that dream, like that made me feel really good as a PM. So bottom line for me is that for me, it's a push factor that I need to be quite aligned with the mission and my own, that accomplish my own personal goal.
Yep.
And maybe for others it's not, but that's how it is for me.
Okay, yeah, so I'm going to push the envelope just a bit more, right? So this is purely from your perspective. If I were to ask you, Christine, passion or purpose, which is more important for you?
Passion or purpose? Oh, why can't it be both?
It's a question. Because so the context behind it is it's been a discussion. So some people have been writing about how important it is for a product manager to have passion versus a product manager knowing their purpose, and whether that's the difference between the two. So yeah, the question for you as a guest is, so if you had to choose, which one would you say ranks higher in your guiding principles, or your first principles, I guess?
So I think that there are so many people that are still looking for their passion, right? And does that mean that you can't be a good PM because you don't know exactly what your passion is? No, I don't think so. I think the reason why we go through our careers, and it's a journey in itself of learning what it is that you're passionate about, right? And you might be lucky if you find it earlier, or you might be, you might find it later. But I don't think that if you don't have a specific passion, like you can't do a good job. I think they're quite different. So yeah, I would say passion comes when it comes, and it comes by you trying and you taking one step forward every day. On purpose, like I think similarly, maybe people don't know exactly what their life purpose is. But maybe I would reframe that to think like, well, you know what you're trying to learn. You know exactly what you're trying to learn and what your next maybe immediate hypothesis is of what you want to be. So I think that's important to have. So knowing why are you taking today? Why are you waking up today? That's your, I think that's important to have. That might not be your ultimate life purpose, but knowing that, you are working towards something that's for yourself, for your family, or for whoever, that's really important. But I wouldn't say that's life purpose, though. I would just say like knowing your why every day is quite important. That would motivate, I think, most people to start to continue to push along.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't see it as finite things. I think they evolve as well, right? Like you could have a passion for coffee today, but then like later down the line, you have a passion for cars. And today your purpose might be to grow into a product leader because you want to ABC. But maybe later on, maybe your purpose is to grow your kids and your family and be a good father or mother figure to them.
Okay, thank you for that. Last question on Transferwise. So you're based in Singapore, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you're handling the Australia and New Zealand market. Right. How does that work? Because obviously you're not in the same geography. Wouldn't it be easier for you to be there? And also, I mean, this is the state of play. And how do you manage as a product manager or product leader?
Yes, technology is awesome. I mean, the flight from Singapore to Sydney was about 8 hours.
Yes.
So it wasn't, I actually used to go probably once every 6 weeks to meet with our partners, talk to like various external regulatory bodies, and also had like customer meetups. So that was really awesome when we could travel. So now, most of the communications have moved to digital versus in person, which, does make it harder, but it's not impossible. And I actually find that the velocity of work hasn't really slowed down. Like maybe there was a transition period, like the first month of being on lockdown, but you just learn to work with different mediums. And so phone calls are more abundant. Using various tools online is really helpful. But I think, once this is over, hopefully be able to go back to Sydney and meet with people again in person.
Okay.
We do have a team there as well. So we do have a team of 5 in the office. And we frequently just liaise on Slack, Zoom, same tools as most people.
Yeah, but it sounds like whatever the arrangement is, whether, now it's predominantly using Slack, you can't take away the importance of having that face-to-face communication, at least periodically, right? It doesn't have to be like, every day, but it has to be that periodic face-to-face interaction. I mean, pre-COVID anyway.
Yeah, you can't. I think that's still really important. So we try to do like virtual team lunches. It's not exactly the same, but I think you need to schedule those outlets. Otherwise, you lose that personable rapport and relationship of working together quite fast, right? So I think early on, learning that you have to make an effort to block out the time for fun and to grow as a team beyond the work that you're doing. That's really important as well. That's been the secret sauce to making sure everyone is still, okay. Like checking in on people outside of work is also really important during this really tough time.
Yeah. Good words. Okay. I'm just aware of time. So there are many other questions I wanted to ask, but I'm just going to have to move to the last section. So this is my favorite part, which is the song. So usually the song is, just to help people get to know you better as a person, and you chose a very special song. So you want to tell the viewers and listeners about it?
I chose a song that always makes me happy. It's Dancing in the Moonlight, Toploader. And the first thing that came to mind was like, well, life doesn't have to be, for me it was like, life doesn't always have to be so serious. Like there were days where I was in Hong Kong and it was like Typhoon 8, where everything gets shut down and like windows are smashed and whatnot, and you learn to see through like all of those challenges. So Dancing in the Moonlight always brings up my spirits whenever there are things that are not so great in the world.
Very nice. I actually did a bit of research into the song, and this is actually quite an
Okay.
old song, and it's been covered like a couple of times
Yeah.
before Toploader did it. So yeah, I was like, oh, this is very interesting as well.
Yeah.
And so curious to know, you chose this song. Was it the song that you grew up to as well? Or was it because so, and the reason why I asked that is because recently I think there was another artist that covered this song. So I'm wondering whether the song came to mind because it was, something from your from growing up memories, or something that was triggered from a recent cover of that song.
No, nothing was triggered recently. It's just a song that's like been with me through. I play it like before um, let's say I've had a really bad conversation or a really crucial conversation, and I play it like in between going to my next session because it just lifts me up again. And I think it just started for me like hearing it for the first time and feeling all these good vibes. So it's I'm kind of the person that like if I like a song, I'll play it on repeat forever. So yeah, this is just one of the songs that stuck out. Another like there's a bunch of other songs that do that as well, but in particular this one in the most recent years because it really resonates with my journey out here in APAC.
Okay, very nice. So that song is once again "Dancing in the Moonlight" by Toploader. So yeah, if you guys want to know, it would have been up here somewhere. I can't remember which side it's on, but yeah, the link will be up there. So Christine, thank you so much for agreeing to be on the show. It was really great talking to you. I wish you all the best in Singapore. Hopefully, we'll be able to meet again, once COVID is over and things start to normalize a little bit. But before we go, are there any final thoughts or anything, any tips, advice that you'd like to leave with our viewers and listeners?
Yeah, so I think maybe some of the listeners are like uh, PMs today who aren't sure, like, oh, what's the next big bold step they're gonna take? Because there's also a lot of like decisions that they need to make on a daily basis, so it could be overwhelming. And my advice is just be bold, and don't be afraid because at the end of the day, like no one has all of the answers, but you need to like push through. You probably already know your stuff, so be bold and push through.
Very nice. Be bold and push through. I like that. So, ladies and gentlemen, that was Christine Sou, who is the product lead for Transferwise, who is on the show. She now calls Singapore home. And to everyone who's at home right now because of any restrictions due to COVID, I hope you will stay safe. And for everyone else, just continue being safe and be happy. I will see you at the next episode. Bye bye.